A big question in the neuroscience of language field is whether or not different languages are processed in the brain in the same way or in a different way. Is there one brain system for all languages, or are different languages subserved by different brain systems? After all, it can seem hard to believe that two completely different languages, like Chinese and English for example, are both processed in the same regions of the brain and in the exact same way. This is the motivation behind G et al.'s study, which looked into the brain areas active during the processing of two different languages to see if there were any similarities or differences, and help uncover the mystery of this topic. The two languages looked at were Chinese and English. Why these two languages in particular? Because they have one fundamental difference. Chinese is a tonal language, and English is a non-tonal language. What does that mean, though? Well, a tonal language is one that relies on tone to convey meanings of words. For example, simply changing the tone in which you pronounce something could lead to you speaking an entirely different word. In English, however, no matter what tone I use to pronounce the word fish, it always means the same thing. Before finding out the answer to our question, we have to know how the study was conducted. The main player in this experiment was the fMRI, a machine that uses a strong magnetic field and radio waves to create detailed images of the blood flow in the brain. Since blood flow indicates brain activity, we can see which areas of the brain are being used based on how much or how little blood is flowing to them. The participants were 30 native Chinese speakers and 26 native English speakers, with matched age, sex, and handedness, all of them being right-handed. Each participant underwent fMRI and was presented with intelligible or unintelligible blocks of speech from their native language, either Mandarin Chinese or English, spoken by a male and a female. Subjects were instructed only to judge the gender of the speakers. So, was it a boy or a girl that you heard speaking? The brain activation of the intelligibility trial and connectivity among the three left hemisphere brain regions was analyzed for both language groups under identical procedures, and then put together for comparison. Now the best part. What exactly did the study find? Firstly, they found that there was a lot of similarities in brain activity for both groups. For Chinese and English speakers, while comprehending speech, the information flowed from the posterior to anterior portions of the temporal cortex. Interestingly, however, there were some differences found between the groups. The English speakers had a significantly stronger dorsal forward connection from the PSTG to the IFG. In the Chinese speakers, the two connections coming from the ASTG were stronger. So, we can see that some connections are stronger for either Chinese or English speakers. Similarly, the three regions in the left hemisphere, Broca's area, Wernicke's area, and the anterior temporal gyrus, are shared by the two language groups, both tonal and non-tonal. But it's the interactions among these regions that varies depending on the language. In other words, a lot of the same brain regions are involved in the processing of both languages, but the communication between these brain regions is slightly different for Chinese versus English. Finally, the study found that the right anterior temporal cortex is crucial for tone processing and was activated far more for Chinese participants listening to speech. This is a pretty big finding because the anterior temporal cortex is downplayed or even ignored by popular contemporary models of speech comprehension. But it seems that it's actually got a pretty big role when it comes to those tonal languages like Chinese. Future cross-language comparison research on brain networks should consider these factors. So, you might be thinking, why should I care about all this? What are the implications of these findings? Well, for starters, this research clarifies some things that have been expected within the field. Namely, different languages are processed using similar brain regions and a similar network of connections. Whether it's Chinese or English, we can safely say that a lot of the same areas of the brain, like Wernicke's or Broca's area, play a big role in helping us understand the language we hear. However, there was a little surprise in these findings that suggests something else. Tonal languages seem to rely on a particular brain region in the language system more than non-tonal languages, and the brain regions talk to each other in different ways when a person is a native speaker of a tonal versus a non-tonal language. So, your friend whose native tongue is Chinese has some different activity going on in his head when he's hearing speech than you do if your native tongue is English. To return to our initial question, is there one brain system for all languages, or are different languages subserved by different brain systems? Like many things in life, the answer lies somewhere in the middle.